Today we will be discussing some horror-related topics, in case you couldn't tell from the lighting up on my face. Alright, nope, can't do it. Can't do it. There we go, that's better. Anyways, welcome back to another video. I'm wearing my Jalen Brunson jersey, rest easy king. So, what happens when you're terrified of horror, but you can't stay away from it? You have this morbid curiosity, and that's the dilemma that I am facing. I faced that my entire life. I'm too scared to play the video games, I'm too creeped out to watch horror media on my own. Yet somehow, I can't stay away, as the player or the YouTuber is facing the terror for me. But don't be mistaken, the jump scares still get me, but my morbid curiosity keeps pulling me into the genre nonetheless. And this is a paradox I feel like me and many others experience when it comes to horror content, especially on YouTube. Like, you want to consume this content, but not on its own per se. Like, you don't want to be the one playing the horror video games. I certainly don't. But you have that curiosity bone that just itches at you. And that's why today I'm going to be talking about a few different forms of horror content online that massage me into this genre. Some throwback content and a little bit of my own personal experience on this platform and on the internet with horror-related content. So don't forget to leave a like if you relate to any of my personal experiences that we talk about today. Okay, so growing up, I got indoctrinated, I guess you could say, to the horror genre by watching a ton of content creators like Markiplier, PewDiePie, and some of those OG Let's Players playing these scary games. I was always too jumpy to play these jump scare games all by myself, but I couldn't get that itch off me to see the games. I wanted to experience all these horror games somehow, some way. So naturally, Let's Plays was a huge influence in my life, growing up in the earliest point of my life. Seeing these guys play games like Sinister or FNAF, terrible movie by the way, it really opened the door for the genre for me. And I remember I was probably around like anywhere from 10 to like 12 or 13, 14 years old watching Let's Plays all the time. And I just love the concepts of scary Let's Play videos, and one of the most commonly known games that got me into Let's Plays was Markiplier's SCP Foundation gameplays. The SCP Foundation is a fictional organization within a game that captures and studies supernatural phenomena, also known as anomalies or SCPs. Side note, the SCP Foundation game was derived from online forums first, and then it turned into a game. Some of the most commonly known anomalies or SCPs were SCPs like SCP-173, SCP-096. Please no, I'm still afraid to look at his face to this day. I can't. Like, I feel like he's gonna come after me now. But just the lore of these characters was so interesting and perfect soil to plant the seeds of a rich lore game, expansive in its universe. But as I aged in life, I slowly started transitioning to another similar genre called creepypastas. Yeah, remember those? Creepypastas? Not the dish. The term creepypasta comes from the word copypasta. And I don't know how many of us are old enough to remember, but a copypasta was one of those paragraphs or short stories that were shared all over by people on the internet in YouTube comment sections or online forums, Facebook comments. And one of the most famous examples of a copypasta involves stories like Bob's Stories, or those copypastas with Bloody Mary, for example, like Bloody Mary will appear under your bed at 3 a.m. tonight if you don't share this story with at least 3 other people on 3 different videos. And these short paragraph stories then transition to a bit longer forms of stories. But as a person in their mid-teens, like 12 to 15 years old, reading these comments, I could never bring myself to look away from these copypasta stories, and I would just end up reading the whole way through, knowing what was waiting for me at the end of the story or the end of the copypasta. And then I would go home thinking that night, Bloody Mary's coming to visit me, and stay awake the whole night playing Pokemon on my DS or something like that. But if you recall, some of the most traumatic stories I would listen to were popular internet stories like Ben Drown, Jeff the Killer, Sonic.exe. And you know what channel I would visit to listen to these stories?
Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and you should pat yourself on the back and have some god dang positivity.
Yep, Some Ordinary Gamers. A now commentary channel, it originally blew up as a creepypasta channel who would just read popular creepypasta stories. Now, When I got my first job, I was about a mile away from home. I didn't have a car by then, so I worked at a Wendy's nearby, and I would just listen to these stories on my walk home and to work. Sometimes walking home from work on a dark, quiet night. And I remember there was a specific part of the walk where you had to go under the bridge, and listening to these creepypastas, man, especially during that part of the walk, always freaking killed me. But I enjoyed it at the same time. And I knew these stories were fake, but it still creeped the fuck out of me. And I was thoroughly entertained. But most of all, I was scared shitless. Eventually, getting older than when I had my first job, the quality of creepypasta stories started becoming dull and redundant. Some ordinary gamers became a commentary channel, and a new form of horror content propped up. At least for me.
Popular world of analog horror. Think Local 58, Gemini Home Entertainment, The Walton Files. Apparently there was just something about the 1980s that was utterly terrifying.
Now, ARG standing for Augmented Reality Games. What the fuck does that mean? In simpler terms, it usually comprises a series of videos with cryptic messaging in the description, editing, and usually follows the format of heavy imagery. Still to this day, ARG videos creep the fuck out of me, even on rewatches. I'm not sure what the term is, but it's the terror or being scared of exaggerated human features. And a lot of these ARG formulas or flavor of horror, at least the ones I've seen, is this kind of theme. Another side note, I swear, man, looking through all of these images actually took years off my life. I'm like, not okay. So why not leave a like for me suffering while sifting through these images? Because like I said, terrified of exaggerated human features. I hate looking through all of these right now. One of the most popular stories in this genre includes a story called The Mandela Catalog, and oh my god, the fear and anxiety this story gave me. The imagery used in this story is haunting. This type of genre, you really had to read between the lines. There is no structured narrative, and that's what makes this genre so interesting as a whole and so terrifying. There's nothing to hold your hand. There is no boogeyman that you're left with. You're left with your imagination at times, and that in itself can be scary. Let's take the movie Skinamarink for example. You might have heard about this lore regarding the movie, but it was an ARG project that got greenlit for the big screen. A truly big step for the genre. However, it was met with mixed reviews. Remember the part where I said this genre is really good at letting your imagination run wild? Well, that can be a good thing because your imagination can be your biggest enemy. But it can also be a bad thing, especially to a casual audience that has no level of imagination and need to have their hand held in a cohesive movie narrative. And listen, that's not a bad thing. It just isn't the cup of tea necessarily for a casual audience. I got here from the creepypasta audience, for instance. So I'm kind of used to these obscure, weird forms of horror content, I guess you can say. And if you and your buddy watch the Skinamarink movie, one of you will be like, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen. And your friend might be like, this wasn't scary at all. I had no idea what was going on the entire movie. Because as I stated before, this genre does involve a little bit of imagination and, you know, thinking, I guess, about what's going on in between scenes and things like that. But the point is, I have a very vivid imagination, so I myself am too scared to view these ARG videos on my own. I prefer watching channels that covered said stories and would cover ARG videos with their own interpretations of what the creator meant here, or what the symbolisms that are scattered throughout the video mean. So channels like Film Theory,
grief and family trauma, all told from the perspective of a 4-year-old child. Everything we see in the film feels like a paranormal situation, right? We hear voices, we see things stuck to the ceiling, we have doors disappearing, and we have this constant grain and distortion. What could cause all of this if not a demon? Well, let's just start from the very beginning. The movie kicks off with a seemingly random event where Kevin falls down some stairs in the middle of the night. We see a series of
God, Matt Pat, you will be missed. Channels like Film Theory would cover, like I said, these ARG videos with their own commentary, and by God, did I fucking eat it. Because these videos are truly dreadful to watch on its own, in a good way. And the colorful commentary really, especially from Matt Pat, would really, you know, help me get through these videos and these symbolisms. So, like I said, similar to Let's Plays videos, I'm still consuming said content, but, you know, with the guided help of someone else. If you want to call me a big scaredy cat in the comments, go ahead. But it was at this point, I was about in my early 20s, I'm going to say, or late teens, like 19, working a remote job, and I would just listen to these videos all day while I was working. Stemming away from ARGs though, we then had Iceberg videos. Yeah, remember those? I already said that. I gotta stop saying, do you remember this? I've already said it like twice, I feel like. Now, these videos were very entertaining. One of the main channels that was a pioneer in this genre, or capitalized on Iceberg videos, was a channel known as Wendigoon. This was my go-to guy for Iceberg videos. Now, since then, he has ventured off to do more commentary style videos and video essays, but still on horror-related topics, but he kind of took a break from the Iceberg videos. I still recommend going back and watching them though, and he was one of the staples in this category when it came to Iceberg video horror content in general. And it's called an Iceberg video because, similar to an iceberg would typically showcase the visible part, often known as the tip of the iceberg, which would symbolize the beginning of the video. More well-known topics are discussed at the start of the video, the tip of the iceberg, the part of the iceberg that you see above the water. But as you progressed lower and lower down to the iceberg, you get into lesser known concepts as the video went on. The mass of the iceberg that's hidden below the water. So, using Wendigoon's most popular videos on iceberg related horror content, he had a Iceberg video on horror movies. He begins at the beginning of the video, aka the tip of the iceberg, with movies like Chucky, the Saw franchises, Friday the 13th, and movies like that. But as he continued on with the video and he goes deeper into the iceberg, he starts talking about more obscure films like a Siberian film. Don't look that up, by the way, you will severely regret it. Now, these videos aren't inherently horror. You can make an iceberg video about anything, like My Little Pony, Call of Duty, whatever. But I always seeked out the creepypasta iceberg videos or the ARG iceberg videos. Anything related to horror when it came to these iceberg videos in general. I was probably watching these kinds of videos the same time I was watching ARG videos, I'd like to say. I'll still watch some Iceberg and ARG videos, don't get me wrong. But after a while, you do have to recognize that these stories, at the end of the day, they're fake, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily make the genres we talked about so far bad per se, but what if a new genre arise incorporating more semblance of realism into its work? And I want to say, from the pandemic time to about a year ago, I was unhealthily obsessed with liminal spaces and backroom horror. Now, some people separate the backrooms and liminal horror from one another, but I just combine the two. They are very similar conceptually, foundationally, though there are some differences to consider, and I'll get into that. So, starting with the original concepts of the backrooms and liminal horror, it started with this picture circulating around the internet, and it was so simple but so real. Other photos then arise, tugging at your nostalgic senses, like you have been to or seen these images before. And that's the best way I can describe this feeling. And like, just vast emptiness, dread in these photos, but a faint taste of nostalgia or childhood senses running rampant when you look at these photos. Whew. God damn, got me talking like an art critic right now. Can't wait to bring a girl to an art date and talk about art. Now, similar concept, the Backrooms follows this foundation, and one particular series blew up. A creator known as Kane Pixels, his use of visual effects, video footage, liminal spaces, deriving off the original photo, is what really brought the Backrooms into the limelight. It introduced the concepts of creatures living in these empty spaces. Now, for better or for worse, it evolved the genre, but many skeptics argue that the introduction of monsters into liminal spaces or backrooms ruins the whole premise. I don't want to get into the politics of backrooms versus liminal spaces. Like I said, I think they have the same foundation to be categorized as like similar, if not the same kind of horror. I look at it like religion. Careful. But you know, you have Catholicism, Catholics, and you have Christianity. They kind of stem off in certain nuanced parts of their ideology, but they come from the same roots, if that makes sense. I really hope some religious nut doesn't clip this part of the video. But around that 2020 to 2022 era of isolation from quarantine, it was the perfect recipe for this genre to explode. Now, I did go down the rabbit hole a little of Backrooms because of my appreciation to SCPs nowadays. For example, you have different backroom levels and you have different creatures in each levels and different dynamics on how to escape said room or survive, and it really follows a similar formula to SCP anomalies and SCP monsters and creatures, which I can definitely appreciate from an entertainment level. Now, I'm not sure from a horror context anymore at this point when it comes to the current iteration of Backrooms, but it's definitely an entertaining read. So yeah, are there fantasy elements in this genre? Yes, but it's more anchored off some semblance of reality, I feel like, and that's what really drives me and what I like about this specific genre of horror content online right now. So let's talk about horror content that I'm currently into nowadays. And like I said before, that's not to say I still won't watch ARG breakdown videos, or I won't watch creepypastas even, or let's plays. I still appreciate those forms of content, but I do have a new streamline of content that's been hitting my way. I'd like to preface before I say it that I think I have officially hit UNC status, because like my parents, I myself am now into, I guess you could say, crime documentaries. Okay, like kind of, just hear me out. I'm not into like those boring like cable crime documentaries that you would find on TV or something like that. I'm talking like obscure cases around the world with like ring cam footage or live streamings involved, or unsolved mysteries in general, or unsolved crime cases even. And the people who fit this niche the most for me are two channels known as Lazy Masquerade and Nexpo. The level of research, the dedication, and attention to detail that these two have when it comes to cult mysteries or mysterious crimes committed, lore surrounding real-life events is truly astonishing. And perhaps it borders the line of entertainment more so than horror at times, but a lot of the content is firmly based on reality. In most cases, the unexplainable, lost media, darkest videos from the internet, there is more of a semblance of reality here than any other genres that we talked about before. And this is where I currently reside as I sip my boba tea at night and get into bed thinking about videos to make, and I just put on these amazingly research packaged videos in front of me. Another honorable mention of a channel that I consume content from is a channel, Blame It on Jorge, who also does deep dive videos into lost media or lost footage. And not like those creepypasta, like, ooh, a seller sold me an ambiguous game with the name crossed off. Hyper-realistic blood, hyper-realistic blood, hyper-realistic blood. I'm so extra sometimes. But I can't wait to see what the horror community on this platform spits out next for me. I think I have such an appreciation for this genre because, unlike other genres, it makes me feel something, man. Even if that feeling is imperiling fear and blackpilling me, this genre makes me feel something. It's hard for a film to make me feel happy, I guess, or cry, or other emotions. I'm not saying I don't ever feel that way when I watch films from other genres. I'm not a psychopath, but the fear I feel from horror-related content on films, it's just so easy to, I guess, to scare me, and I like feeling something when I watch something. And although that feeling some could consider a negative, I look back on it and stories like me walking to work, listening to creepy videos and being creeped out, I look back on those memories fondly, to be honest. And that is why I declare horror the king genre, the alpha genre on this YouTube platform. So yeah, that's my personal journey into horror-related content. I still watch a lot of these same channels like Some Ordinary Gamers, Wendigoon. I still consume all these content creators. Even though some of them have evolved to doing other types of content, I really appreciate for the memories they gave me and will support anything that they do to this day. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I had such a fun and scary time making it. I'm very interested in horror, so I wanted to get a horror kind of video out there that I think others would appreciate. I also want this channel to be like a video diary, similar to Some Ordinary Gamers. I want to be able to talk about anything I want, whether it be scary content or political content or sports. I want to be able to talk about everything. Now, I don't know how the YouTube algorithm's going to take that, but screw it, who cares? It's my video diary. I want to be able to do whatever I want with it. Did you have a similar archetype in this genre like I did? Or did I miss any niche horror content that I should go back and revisit? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm very interested in what you guys think. So until the next video, I am Outski.